welcome to Money Trail with me, Amir Arafat. Today, U.S. Congress representatives of, by, and for the 1%.
If the Founding Fathers could see the cesspool that U.S. Congress has become today, they would roll over in their graves. Members of Congress only work a little over a third of a days on the calendar. The rest of the time, they have off. It is no wonder why so many members of Congress are involved in so much corruption. Many members of Congress also use their positions of power and the information they learn during the course of their duties to become fabulously wealthy. At a time when incomes nationally are actually declining, U.S. Congress critters are becoming rich at a staggering pace. Politics in America has always been a game that is funded and played by wealthy individuals. But things have gotten so extreme that it is hard to argue that average Americans have any control over Congress at all. Instead of a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, the Americans now have a government of the wealthy, by the wealthy, and for the wealthy.
Congress is not representing the people, and it is representing rather the special interests who are profiting from big government.
The problem you have in the Congress, and more so in the Senate, where it's much more of an old boys network than it is in the House, because these guys stick around a lot longer. You have what I would call the go along to get along phenomena. That is, if the party leadership has decided on a course, and if you're in disagreement, a lot of pressure can be put on you to go along with the party line. Otherwise, you run the risk of not getting a plum committee assignment, or your voting resolutions won't be given due consideration. Things like that, in which you can be manipulated. In
reality, the Democrat and Republican parties are essentially one party. They're sort of like football teams. They're wearing different colored jerseys, red and blue, but they're playing the same game. And that game is dishing out money to special interests in return for donations to their political campaigns and retention of their power. And we need to, the first thing we can do is, besides downsizing government, which we must work to do at all times, is get rid of all the campaign finance laws. They're an obvious joke. They're doing absolutely nothing to stop special interests from influencing Congress and the laws that get passed. Instead, what we should do is have require anyone who's a direct contractor or employee, government union, require all of them to sign a conflict of interest statement and a promise that they will not donate to any campaign as long as they are receiving funds from government.
More than $6 billion was spent on political campaigns in 2012. When it comes to federal elections, the candidate that raises the most money wins about 90% of the time. Since 1964, the re-election rate for members of the U.S. House of Representatives has never fallen below 85%.
Well, what's happening behind the scenes is that every election requires a tremendous amount of money to get the nomination, first of all, and then to win the election against the opponent. That money, to some extent, is coming from ordinary voters and citizens, but the great majority of it is coming from the people who have the money, and that is the banks, that is the financial institutions who are financing this, and they always have an agenda. And of course, they're going to give the money to the people who carry out the agenda.
The 1% have their issues attended to in the Congress because they put up the money to get these people into the White House, to get these people into the Congress and into the Senate, into governorships, into state legislatures. The entire structure of representative government is flawed. When people go vote, they give their power away on election day, they are giving their power to representatives who then dispose of it as they see fit, based upon where they're getting their money to be able to run for office. The answer has to be, and if you don't want to deal with the answer, you can just say that we are doomed. Our semblance of democracy does not exist. It's representative government, and it's very corrupt.
Over the past couple of decades, the wealth gap between members of Congress and average Americans has grown to ridiculous proportions. The truth is that Congress has become all about money. It takes huge piles of money to get elected to Congress. It takes huge piles of money to stay in Congress. And most members of Congress seem to be able to accumulate gigantic piles of money while serving their country. Today, over 250 members of Congress are millionaires. The median net worth of members of Congress is about $1 million. The collective net worth of all members of Congress increased by 25% between 2008 and 2010. Meanwhile, the standard of living in the United States has fallen farther over the past few years than at any other time that has ever been recorded in U.S. history. After adjusting for inflation between 1984 and 2009, the median net worth of members of Congress rose from $280,000 to $725,000, while the median net worth of all Americans actually declined.
There's a lot of people who donate to campaigns, some who are big players, many who are not, who are really trying to shrink government. I mean, that's the whole purpose of the Libertarian Party. We're not trying to make money from government. We don't want jobs in government. We want to shrink government. We want there to be a lot fewer jobs. And there are some people with wealth who are donating for that purpose, and we applaud that, and that's their constitutional right. The problem is when you have people donating who have a financial interest in government. And that's the real problem, because they're going to support the politicians who keep voting for higher taxes, higher spending, and supporting and putting money into the programs where these special interests in turn profit. That is the problem, and that should be prohibited as a matter of law, as a matter of a policy, that anyone we give a contract or an employment or a job to in government should be prohibited from donating to campaigns and influencing elections. Just as a judge should be forbidden from ruling in a case where he has a financial interest in one of the parties. It's a conflict of interest. That's the problem. They keep avoiding this heart of the issue matter and instead passing campaign finance regulations that do nothing but create more bureaucracy, waste, and inhibit the very rightful voices, the First Amendment rights of ordinary citizens, which is wrong. So we need to completely trash our current campaign finance laws and get back to the fundamental issue, which is conflict of interest. Forbid anyone from donating to campaigns who is making money from government and from the contracts that those politicians